What's going on, everyone? So, we now know that Tabitha and Jade are the reincarnated versions of Miranda and Christopher. And it's been like a long line, right? Those are just the characters that we're familiar with. They were all the way back in the beginning a couple. They have a daughter, which you saw kneel in front of Tabitha, that said the Unkui, that unlocked Jade and Tabitha's memories of the past. Whatever their names were back then, say John and Mary, right? Like that, those were their names. They had a daughter. They tried to save the daughter. They were unsuccessful in saving the daughter. And now the daughter's been trying to help each reincarnated version remember, but none of them have been able to get to the point that Tabitha and Jade have gotten to, which is great to see, right? But now that you've introduced the reincarnation element, something that I've talked about is to what extent does this go? Is it something where Tabitha and Jade are special because they were the only parents that weren't willing to sacrifice their children, right? They tried to save the children and they tried to save their daughter, right? Everyone else, all the monsters you saw, they all became monsters and sacrificed their children for immortality so they could live forever. It's why you saw Smiley return and come back, right? So you had all these monsters make the sacrifice of their children, but Jade and Tabitha, again, let's say they were John and Mary, they refused. They wouldn't do it. No, like Jade said, we've seen her lullabies, right? Like they had this love for their daughter. They never wanted to hurt their daughter. They never were. They were trying to save her, but they failed. And each iteration has failed since then. But is that why they are chosen? Is that why they are the reincarnated versions? Or does it go even further, right? Like, is Boyd reincarnated? Is Donna reincarnated? Or is it only like a select few that are reincarnated, right? Because you got to think, right? You have Christopher and Miranda, right? Well, Christopher, we don't know about his family life and all that stuff. Maybe it appears that he was here alone, right? But did he leave behind children and a wife and all that? We don't know anything about his family life. But Miranda, we do. We know that her son, Victor, is alive and well in, how well, but alive in Fromville, as well as her husband, Henry, is now alive in Fromville. And Eloise, by the way, who they refuse to confirm that she is dead. Right? They are doing everything in their power besides going, yeah, it's her, she's dead. Right? Like, they showed a burial site, right, that Victor had. And when Henry asked, he goes, I don't know, right? Like, she was so small, I think so. He says, maybe, essentially, right? Like, where that was a great moment to just confirm it. I think, if I'm being honest, I think that the creators of From don't really know, and this is just my opinion, don't really know what they want to do with the Eloise storyline. They don't know if they want to integrate her in some capacity, or if they want to kind of just let her, be dead and then not go that direction. So you kind of keep it open-ended, right? So it's like, if you don't ever do anything with it, it's like, well, hey, Victor showed you the burial site, right? Like, yeah, he said he wasn't sure, but he obviously was. You never saw her. Or, it's like, hey, he told you it wasn't. He told you he wasn't sure. Guess what? Here she is, right? Like, it kind of leaves the door open for the creators. But you have Victor, who's alive. You have Tabitha, who is the reincarnated version of Victor's mother, Miranda. Is it possible that, let's assume Eloise is dead, right? Because it doesn't work if Eloise is alive, obviously. Is it possible that Eloise died and got reincarnated into Julie? Right? Like, you have a character in Miranda as well as Tabitha that were the chosen ones, right? Because of the lineage, right? Going all the way back to the beginning. Well, they both had a daughter and a son. I know Tabitha had a son that died. That may have just been because that was meant to happen, right? We also don't know, did Miranda have that happen, right? Maybe she had the same thing, right? We don't know if that's kind of a thing that all these versions have. Could just kind of be its own separate thing, but it also could be no, each one is supposed to have a boy and a girl, right? Like, Miranda had Eloise and Victor. Tabitha had Ethan and Julie. But she ended up having another boy, which threw everything off. So guess what had to happen, right? Like, Thomas, sorry, right? Like, that could be how this kind of goes, right? Like, again, you've seen with From, everything's very structured. Everything's very specific. Everything's very purposeful. As soon as something starts getting, a wrench gets kind of thrown into it, it kind of corrects itself in a lot of ways, right? So maybe that was kind of what Fromville was doing, because, again, Tabitha is the reincarnated version. Well, does that mean that, obviously, Ethan can't be the reincarnated version of Victor, because Victor died, but that could also be why things are changing, right? And I've talked about this. It's very possible that Victor was supposed to and meant to die, and he didn't, which threw everything for a loop, right? And it all started happening when Ethan ended up getting there, right? Because I don't think Ethan and Victor were supposed to survive together. I don't think they were supposed to be there together. I think Ethan was supposed to be Victor, and then Julie is supposed to be Eloise. But Victor never died. So, and the boy in white has protected Victor, and they're friends and all that. Right? Because, I mean, how else did Victor survive? Like, how did he, monsters are running around and he's hiding? Like, yeah, sure, but 40 years and they never found him, right? Like, he's survived the conditions, everything, probably because he's best friends with the boy in white, right? And the boy in white was looking after him, or maybe even left him off limits. I mean, Victor even goes into the tunnels, and the monsters literally have him dead to rights. They could just kill him if they want to. And they're like, hey, you keep coming down here, we might have to make you stay, kind of like throwing a joke to him, which, again, I think that there's been a lot of evidence that has shown Victor. I did a whole video on it, so if you're curious about that, go check it out. But there's been a lot of evidence that kind of signals towards Victor's untouchable. But I digress, right? So Victor is the reason everything got kind of thrown for a loop, right? So, but Eloise, if she died, it would make sense that maybe Julie is the reincarnated version of Eloise. That Eloise, if she would have survived, right? If she would have kind of continued down her path, she would have been the one that would have eventually became the story walker, right? Maybe there's a version where, each version has the mother and husband, and then has the story walker, the daughter that's a story walker. So Julie was a story walker, so could Eloise. Another kind of thing that I just kind of want to throw into this video real quick is, a lot of people think that Danny, now that we know her first name, that Danny Acosta, Officer Acosta, that she is potentially Eloise reincarnated. It's very possible. That very well could be the case. I don't want to rule it out, which is why I kind of wanted to leave that in here. It feels like Eloise is something's going to happen, right? At some point, she's going to kind of be like, oh, surprise, this is really her, right? Like, it feels like Eloise's storyline isn't going to go nowhere, right? Like, they keep purposefully leaving things open-ended and not just being like, yeah, okay, this is what happened, right? Like, which is frustrating, but nonetheless, right? Sticking with the Julie story, I just wanted to kind of mention that a lot of people think that it's Acosta, and it very well could be, right? Maybe it isn't Julie, but I do think that Julie, it makes sense. Now, the kind of counterpoint you could make, because like I said, whenever I do these like theories and ideas, I always try to, argue both sides. The counterpoint is, it took a special curse that had, as far as we know, never been unleashed, that had been locked away to cause Julie to get to that point. Or did it? Right? Like, because you could argue that, Julie, Marielle, and Randall ended up with the music box curse, and Boyd put an end to it. But that caused Julie to be connected to the ruins. Or did it? Because, again, we never saw Julie go anywhere near those ruins prior. Maybe she would have always been called in, right? Like maybe she always would have had that connection to those ruins. That's a very real possibility. So I don't think that necessarily it will be like oh well, you know, if the music box curse never happened, she would have done it. No, I think that that's just something that has happened. I think that's just kind of the way it goes, and I think that Julie may potentially just be Eloise, and she is the story walker, just like her mother is the one that tried to save the daughter, and that's kind of the thing, right? Maybe her daughter, right? Like the dead one that she's trying to save, right? Maybe she was Eloise before Eloise. You know, like again, that you got the reincarnated chain all the way down, and they were all destined to die. Just like Eloise died, just like daughter died. Okay, well, maybe Julie is destined to die. Something to kind of keep in mind. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you kind of mixed in the middle? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.